A few weeks ago, my immediate boss sat me down for a conversation that completely derailed my week. He asked me to discuss with my missus the possibility of repositioning our entire family overseas for a new professional mandate. On paper, it's an incredible opportunity, a step up, a new market, more institutional capital to deploy. But internally, it triggered an absolute crisis. Not about the logistics, not about the schools, not about the tax implications. It triggered a crisis about identity, because for years I have been meticulously building the JC Fund framework. I've been optimizing Engine A dividend growth, expanding Engine B global high-quality growth, and recently rolling out Engine C, which is opportunistic stocks, all architected toward one very specific target, a 140,000 Singapore dollars structural dividend floor by July 2027. The whole point of this machine is to step away. But when I was handed a real, tangible fork in the road, a moment that essentially forced me to choose between leaning further into the corporate grind or finally preparing to pull a ripcord, I realized something deeply uncomfortable. I am terrified to quit my job, and I suspect many of you watching this are too. You've done the math. You have the spreadsheets. Maybe you're even close to the number. But something is holding you back. Something that has nothing to do with interest rates, dividend coverage ratios, or sequence of returns risk. Today, we need to talk about the dark side of early retirement, not the math. The math is dialed in. We need to talk about the fear of losing your identity, the psychological void of stepping away in your 40s, the guilt that creeps in when your spouse is still working, the terror of an unstructured Tuesday morning, the dangerous one-more-year loop that keeps high achievers trapped long past their financial finish line. And at the end, how I am trying to reframe this entire transition from running away from a job to stepping into a purpose. Help to like and subscribe to support this channel. It is free and costs you nothing. This will help the algorithm to bring the channel back to you. Let's get into it. There is a massive psychological trap inside the financial independence movement. We spend a decade obsessing over spreadsheets, yield traps, dividend growth rates, and sequence of returns risk. We model every scenario in Excel. We stress test our portfolios against 1929, 2008, and COVID, but we spend almost zero time stress testing our own psychology. For the last couple decades, my identity has been inextricably linked to being an investment professional. When I meet someone at a dinner party, the introduction is effortless. The title does the heavy lifting. The institutional affiliation signals credibility, intelligence, and status, all in a single sentence. The corporate structure provides a very neat, socially acceptable box for who I am and what my value is to the world. The dark side of early retirement is what I call the Monday morning question. Imagine it's the first Monday after you retire. The dividend portfolio is generating your target income. The JC Fund is fully operational. You wake up at 8 a.m. Your spouse is doing their thing. The kids are at school. You pour a cup of coffee. Now what? Without a title, without institutional capital to allocate, without a boss asking for a macro overview on the changing world order, the weaponized dollar, or the latest Fed minutes. Who are you? That loss of identity is paralyzing. If you strip away the job title, many of us over 40 are secretly terrified that there isn't much left underneath. We are afraid of becoming irrelevant. We are afraid that the thing we mistook for our personality was actually just our job description. And that fear, much more than any fear of a market crash, is exactly what keeps the golden handcuffs locked so tight. Here's a fear that almost nobody in the FI community talks about openly because it feels too personal, too close to home. The guilt of stepping away when your spouse is still working. My missus and I have built this plan together. She knows the numbers. She believes in the framework. But there's a deeply uncomfortable power dynamic that emerges when one partner moves into financial independence while the other continues in active employment, even if it's by choice, and even if the portfolio is generating shared income. On the rational side, it's the fear of being perceived as not pulling your weight, of being the one who stopped. Society, especially for men in their 40s who have been conditioned since university to equate value with productivity, has a very particular way of making you feel like stepping back is a form of surrender. And it doesn't stop with your spouse. It radiates outward. Parents who grew up in a different era, where you worked until 65 and felt grateful for privilege, don't easily compute early retirement in your 40s. What they hear is, I'm giving up. Friends who are still grinding in banking, consulting, or law calculate your freedom against their sacrifice, and the social friction that creates is real. The truth is, financial independence is not a solo achievement. It is a family system decision, an emotional labor of aligning everyone in that system, spouse, children, parents, social circle, is work that the spreadsheet never accounts for. The antidote isn't to delay the exit. It's to do the relational work in parallel with the financial work. You need to build consensus, not just a portfolio. That means having honest, sometimes uncomfortable conversations long before July 2027, not a single announcement at the finish line. Here's something I've been sitting with lately. A significant portion of my adult social life, the daily lunches, the hallway conversations, the post-deal dinners, the team offsites, is entirely mediated by my employer. When you leave the institution, you don't just lose a salary. You lose your professional tribe. This is an underrated driver of why high performers stay in roles well past their financial need to. The office provides daily human interaction with people who share your intellectual bandwidth, your ambitions, and your professional language. It provides belonging, and belonging, as Maslow correctly pointed out decades ago, is a fundamental human need that sits just above food and shelter. The FI community often romanticizes the idea of freedom, but freedom can very quickly shade into isolation if you haven't deliberately built the social infrastructure to replace what work provided. Think about it practically. Your friends from university are still working. Your neighbors are at the office. Your old colleagues are heads down in Q2 planning. When you step away, unless you have intentionally built new communities, whether that's a content creator network, a Substack mastermind, a local investor circle, or even just a standing coffee group of other FI-minded individuals, Tuesday at 11 a.m. can feel profoundly, disorienting, lonely. This is one of the most underestimated risks in early retirement, and it's the one that causes the most "I'm thinking of going back" conversations in FI forums. The prescription: build your post-retirement social architecture before you retire. Don't wait. The YouTube community you are building, the LinkedIn connections, the Substack readers, these are not vanity metrics. They are the foundation of your new professional tribe. Start treating them that way now. Here's a fear that sounds almost too mundane to take seriously until you actually face it. The 9 to 5 is not just a job. It is a psychological scaffolding system. Your calendar tells you what to do, when to do it, and who you need to show up for. Your performance review tells you whether you're good enough. Your team's deadlines create external accountability. The entire corporate architecture, as frustrating and bureaucratic as it often feels, is quietly providing a structure that most of us have never had to generate from the inside out. Early retirement obliterates that scaffolding in a single day. High achievers who have been operating inside institutional structures for 20-plus years often discover, to their horror, that without external accountability they struggle to focus. The very autonomy they spent a decade chasing turns out to be deeply destabilizing when it finally arrives. I've spoken to people who retired early and within 6 months described symptoms that sound almost clinical: directionlessness, low-grade anxiety, a gnawing sense that the day was wasted even after genuinely enjoyable activities. Not because they were unhappy, but because the internal metrics for a successful day, the ones your employer used to provide for free, had vanished overnight. There's also the identity of competence at play. When you are inside a high-functioning professional environment, you receive constant micro-confirmations that you are smart, capable, and valuable. Colleagues ask your opinion. Junior staff look to you for guidance. Your expertise is deployed daily. Strip that away and the silence is deafening. This is not a reason to stay. It is a reason to design your freedom intentionally. For me, that means building a structured content creation calendar for this channel and my Substack. It means scheduling research blocks for the JC Fund framework the same way I would schedule client meetings. It means treating my passion projects, including the microfinance work in Manila, with the same rigor I would apply to an institutional mandate, because the discipline doesn't come from the building. It has to come from within. And you need to practice building that muscle before the scaffolding disappears. And then there is this one, the most insidious fear of them all, because it masquerades as prudence. The one more year trap. It works like this. You hit your number, but then the market has a bad quarter, and you think, maybe I should work one more year just to build a thicker buffer. So you do, and then a macro headwind emerges. Maybe the Fed pivot, maybe it's a China slowdown, and you think, the timing isn't right. One more year. Then a career opportunity arrives that feels too interesting to decline. One more year. Your kids start secondary school. One more year. The portfolio just needs to hit the next clean round number. One more year. Before you know it, you are 52. The portfolio is generating twice what you need, and you are still showing up every Monday morning because the exit now feels more terrifying than the work. I want to be direct about this. One more year is almost never a financial decision. It is a fear decision dressed up in financial language. The math rarely changes in year 14 versus year 13. What changes is the accumulation of psychological inertia. The longer you delay the leap, the higher the activation energy required to make it. The comfort of the known grows every year. The courage required to disrupt it grows with it. There is a clinical term for this. It sits adjacent to what behavioral economists call status quo bias. The brain assigns disproportionate weight to the losses associated with change versus the gains. So even when the numbers clearly say you're there, the emotional ledger keeps finding new reasons to stay. The antidote is a hard, pre-committed exit date with public accountability. For me, that's July 2027. It's on the channel. It's in the framework. It's on my family's planning horizon. That date is not a target. It is a commitment device, a forcing function designed specifically to override the one more year loop when it inevitably resurfaces. If you don't set the date never comes. The only way to defeat the fear of losing your identity is to proactively build a new one before you leave. You cannot just retire from something. You have to retire to something. And this is where the entire conversation shifts. Because when I sit down and honestly map out what time wealth looks like for me, it is incredibly clear. It's not sitting on a beach. It's reallocating my time as a capital allocator. But this time, the capital is my energy, and the returns are measured in impact and purpose, not basis points. Micro-level impact. True time wealth means having the bandwidth to sit at the computer on a Tuesday afternoon and code a 2D web game about a magical cat catching items under the sea, just to see my daughter light up when she plays it. It means being fully present for those micro moments without my brain hijacked by a corporate deadline or a board presentation. Macro-level impact. Stripping away the 9 to 5 gives me the runway to pursue work that genuinely moves the needle on something I care about. A few months ago, I was in Manila, deep diving into the unit economics of microfinancing and poverty alleviation. That is complex, meaningful, intellectually rigorous work, analyzing incentive structures to actually help pull people out of poverty, a purpose that goes infinitely deeper than any corporate quarterly result. The new identity isn't built on a title. It's built on contribution. My new identity isn't about hoarding the financial frameworks I spent 20 years building. It's about open sourcing them. The hours I currently spend working will be reallocated to this YouTube channel, my Substack, and my LinkedIn. Because there are thousands of professionals in their 40s who are exactly where I am, burnout, trapped in the active income cycle, staring at a portfolio that's almost there, trying to figure out how to execute the transition without destroying their family's financial stability or their own sense of self. If I can use my background in institutional capital allocation to distill the macro noise, teach the mechanics of a multi-bucket dividend framework, and help just one other person buy their time back, that is a far more powerful legacy than any institutional mandate I've ever executed. Knowledge, deployed at scale, is its own dividend. So let me land the plane. Fear of stepping away from your day job, even when you can afford to, is not a weakness. It is entirely rational. The identity you constructed over 20 years doesn't dissolve quietly. The social infrastructure built around employment doesn't auto-replace itself. The psychological scaffolding of a structured career doesn't have a drop-in substitute. And the siren call of one more year will find you, regardless of what your portfolio statement says. Acknowledging these fears is not a reason to stay. It is the map for what you need to build before you go. The 140,000 Singapore dollar dividend target by July 2027 isn't just a financial number anymore. It is the exact price of admission to trade a corporate identity for a purpose-driven life. It is the forcing function that gives me a hard deadline against the one more year trap. It is a framework around which my missus and I are building our family's next chapter. It is terrifying, and it is worth it. If you are struggling with the exact same fear of stepping away, whether it's identity, family pressure, isolation, structure, or the goalposts that keep moving, tell me in the comments, what is the one passion project you would immediately pursue if your income was fully automated tomorrow? Let's talk about it down there. Subscribe if you want to keep following the JC Fund journey to July 2027. New content drops every week. I'll see you in the next one.